Roger, hold on a second. I wasn't recording before, so would you mind just saying that again? This morning, I understand that one of your accounts was suspended on Twitter, and you were just saying something about the difference between Twitter and Facebook from the perspective of dialogue, from the perspective of either the powerful or users.
Yeah, okay. Twitter is, the way I see it as being designed for, is a way of funneling traffic towards a broader, richer message. But it is used by people to engage in discussion. The problem with discussion in however many characters you're allowed at the moment is that it makes a polarized debate the only real possibility. And if you're writing propaganda narratives and you're having people conduct their discussions that way, that's great for you. That you would like that. If you want a more informed debate, it wouldn't be something that you would want to encourage. I mean, the Brexit debate in Britain is a classic example of people throw slogans at each other, both retire feeling, suitably enriched and empowered by the fact that that will tell them, and no one's actually listened to each other, and that's been going on for 3.5 years, and people wonder why it is that that people aren't getting on now. So that's Twitter. Facebook is you get much richer discussions where you can provide a lot more context, basically because you can write as long as you like and go on, etc. The problem with Facebook is that people have their friend thing. It's like it becomes an in-group, and therefore people reinforce each other just with richer prejudices or with a wider context for their.
What was the quote that you used yesterday? It's a big something, and you're not invited.
Oh, it's just that it's a big party and you're not invited. That's the George Carlin famously, about power. I mean, the other thing he said is if voting changed anything, it wouldn't be allowed. And again, they're kind of. I mean, that slips from skepticism into cynicism, if you like. But there are huge dollops of truth in all of these sort of comedic.
Now, can I jump in with a couple of things, because obviously I'd quite like to be fairly quick, so I want to say a couple of things and then hear what your responses are to them. Okay, I will give you probably 2 or 3 little things. First of all, I'll come out with the extreme provocation first. No, I'll do that last, actually, because I like you. I'll kill you last. So yesterday on Twitter, in the subject that you were talking about, someone who I have been blocked by is included in this. But yes, the conversation is this: Grace Blakeley. Did you see any of what went on Twitter with her yesterday?
No, I didn't. I do know who she is, but I don't know what went on. She's
got a book out called Stolen. I think it was released yesterday or the day before.
Right.
It's I don't think it's styling itself as the primer on financialization, but it's sort of saying how we have to, basically how financialization is ruining the world. Okay. Now I know that, so anyway, she's released the book. Someone came across some of it, a paragraph somewhere. Basically, Francis Coppola, who, as we know, is pro basic income and has worked as an IT consultant for the banks, for RBS. I think 20 years ago, RBS NatWest, I think she did the changeover for them on IT. She's got MBA from London Business School, and she blogs a lot. She knows her stuff. I don't think she's hugely unorthodox in her approach to things. I'm talking about her economic philosophies. She's just pro basic income. But as you probably know, if she disagrees with someone, as you know, she's a rampant Remainer. If she disagrees with someone, she says so, and then any sort of a fight will begin. So she basically said, "This is crap." She saw paragraphs on there that implied that Grace's understanding of the word capital meant that she was confusing things to do with balance sheets and things like that. Basically, Frances said, "This is awful. It's bad. It's not good." And it's now out there, floating out there. What can you say? It's bad. It's just not good. Of course, Frances will occasionally use short sentences and move on to the next one, and that's it. Show's over. So basically, I think Grace, to her credit, got back in contact. So I didn't know too much about this because Grace blocked me ages ago. So Grace got in contact and said, "Oh yes, I've had a look. Yeah, I've made the same mistake throughout the whole book. This is something that's going to have to be corrected for the second edition." So yeah, I'm just telling you that was interesting that had happened, and that's going on, and that's out there floating. Another thing is this, someone who I know that you have in the past had some time for, is the Dominic Cummings story. So BuzzFeed, they published this story 2 days ago at about midday. The Guardian published the follow-up. This is to do with the .gov.uk information stuff. The Guardian published a story at, I think, about 1852. Shall we say, unsurprisingly, no comments were disabled. On the BuzzFeed article now, nearly 2 days later, there are 9 comments. Yesterday, before I left the house in the morning / afternoon, there were 8 comments. When I came back last night, there were 9. I noticed today there are 9 comments. It said trending views, 250,000 views, something like that, over 200,000 views, according to the BuzzFeed, trendometer thing.
What, and only 9 comments?
Yeah. So that's my point. Yeah, exactly. 9 comments. That's BuzzFeed, and then eventually the Independent yesterday evening did a little something. Only 2 comments are on there. I wanted to read the comments last night, and I couldn't, and I didn't feel it was very encouraging. Even I wanted to just go, bang and comment, but I wasn't really. I didn't find it that friendly. There were 2 comments. One of them is very good because one of them points towards a Guardian article where, in the last 2 or 3 paragraphs, a new one, they quote Richard Tice talking about. Actually, this is quite funny. You know how Boris has been saying that his favorite political philosopher or politician is Pericles. You know how he's been saying that? He says, Boris now, in a very Erdogan sort of way, does Facebook PMQs. Yeah, I think he calls it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
any of them, but yeah, I've seen that he's been doing that.
I would call it Erdogan-esque because of the fact that the questions are so obviously rigged, and it's also, he's probably recorded it in advance. But anyway, the point is, he does that sort of thing, and he sort of sometimes, I saw children's inverted quotes. So school journalists came to number 10 and they said, "Who's your favorite politician?" He goes, "Well, obviously, Churchill, but Pericles." And then he goes, because, he was very do or die. He was, for the many, not the few, and all of this stuff. And you think, oh, my God. David told me 3 years ago, to our friend David Malone, who introduced us, he had just run for the Green Party, and I was asking him, are you doing it again? And he did say to me back then, we live in an age of demagoguery. I think he still remained somewhat open-minded for a few moments about it, but has quite clearly chosen not to be the demagogue. But so Boris is obviously 100%, and it was just interesting. So TechCrunch have put up an article, Computer Weekly have put up an article, the BBC completely ignored it. Andrea Leadsom was on the TV yesterday morning; she wasn't even asked about it. And Channel 4 News, the kind of organisation that you would have thought.
I must admit, I've seen a couple of your tweets, and I haven't read any of the articles yet.
Well, I've only just put them up. I mean, I've been doing the tweets this morning, I think. Yeah.
Right. Well, and I noticed. I did notice yesterday.
Yeah. Okay.
you know, but I didn't pay any mind in the same way that I haven't watched the Boris
PMQs.
thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Well, don't worry, I haven't done that either.
But I'm curious now, so I'll probably watch one.
You're
but,
sure,
but,
yeah.
The number of comments is interesting because maybe other people are reacting the same way as we have.
Well, I did put that down.
You know what I mean?
I'm just writing a blog post, and I said,
is it a sideshow? Is it a dead? You know, the famous sort of Crosby-esque dead cat bounces. Cat.
Well, I mean, they're not just spreading amnesia; they're spreading apathy. You know, it's disempowering, and not only that, there is also the fear aspect too. So this morning, I logged on to I've decided to subscribe to the Irish Business Post. I've seen it here on Sundays occasionally. It's brilliant.
Okay.
I mean, the little bit that I've seen is brilliant. So you know, expect the occasional PDF because it's not on the Bypass Paywalls website. And I woke up this morning. I saw one article on there. It was, can't remember who it was by. Probably someone in his 40s, and it said Ticketmaster. Getting grief because it's one thing to turn up and hand your money over. It's another thing to buy your ticket online. It's another thing to have your phone having to be switched on in order to flash the QR code, you know, and all of that stuff. But all of that is good. But now Ticketmaster look like they're going to be doing facial recognition.
Oh my word.
And it was a brilliant last line. You know, he mentioned, it's a tiny article, but just bang, bang, bang. He mentions Hong Kong, you know, and says, look at what they were doing in Hong Kong. You know, they're not wearing masks to protect themselves from gas. It's from the fucking cameras.
On that point, I'd highly recommend that anyone that stumbles on this, if it appears online anywhere, to watch the film Anon, ANON, which is, it was out last year, and it's by the same guy that made I'm a big fan of his work, who made The Truman Show and just.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Did you tell me? I think you told me his name. What's his name again?
Hold on.
I'm definitely not holding on. So
seconds, it won't take me long.
Yeah. So whilst the last line, so the man, he talked about Ticketmaster, facial recognition, resistance, but of course, at the very beginning of the article and at the very end, he talked about, and I know they are absolutely enormous in Ireland, as they were everywhere. He talked about Rage Against the Machine. And I can't remember, I think he said Tom Morello, the guitarist. He said, the last line, he said, he said, Rage Against the Machine are not happy about this. You know, can you imagine what they think? And there was a line in it where he said, imagine if the Stasi had facial recognition. And then, so these are brilliant lines in a short piece. And the last line, he said, may I give you the spoiler?
Yeah, go.
The last line, he said, if only Tom Morello had a line to say about this.
Right.
And I thought, oh my God, that's so funny.
And does he?
well, the thing is that their most famous line is, you know, and this is so adequate for Ireland. It's, fuck you, I won't do what you tell me. you know, which they just repeat over and over again. So
it's that famous joke about the IRA anarchist gets washed up on a desert island, gets you know, captured by the local tribal people, and they're sort of getting all upset with him, and he sort of says, tell me, he says, is there a government? And they say, well, yeah, of course there is. Chief, he said, well, let me tell you, I'm against it. You know, if there's a government, I'm against it, regardless of what they stand for or what they've done. It's the default position. But
that's the same as you, though, really, isn't it, Roger? That's quite similar to you.
Well, I'm a philosophical anarchist, but that doesn't mean that I'm not against government per se.
Okay.
or the rule of law. I mean,
All right.
what I'm against, it was Immanuel Kant described anarchy as rule of law without violence, and democracy as the rule of law with violence.
Well, I like that. Now, can I just tell you one last thing? Because I did say that there was a fairly provocative thing which I would save till the end. Okay. So here it is. Do you remember how I said the BBC didn't touch it? The Guardian had no comments, but they did something a few hours afterwards. Buzzfeed had only 8 or 9 comments.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of starting a program. Do you remember the thing with me with the Times feed on my right, and I was talking about Dominic Cummings about 10 days ago, and then eventually I said, "Oh, prepare! It might be a bit racist now. We're going to go into the comments, and it's the Times." And I was like, "Tee hee hee." I was obviously in a good mood. So I was thinking of starting 2 little skits, either programs or sub-programs. One would be called In the Doc, where I basically just find any government document and talk about it, and say, "Hey, I'm probably wrong, but maybe it means this, maybe it's related to that." And then the other one is Below the Line, where I say, "Let's have a look at the conversation. Let's have a look at the bants in these various periodicals, because that's not always." There is not much light shone on that, and that's where the actual wisdom of the wisdom of crowds.
That's what I like about Off Guardian, and they have a series in Off Guardian is why is this comment against community rules?
I like it.
They look at comments which have been basically weeded out, and kind of well, this has been weeded out not because it breaks any rules, just basically because the editor disagrees with it.
Well, how about this? Obviously, I've got to rush off, but how about in the future, hopefully in the short future, we book a little bit of time sometime to have a screen share, record the Skype program, possibly stream it, actually. Fuck it. I think it's time for us to start streaming. So we can do an OBS stream on YouTube where we have a look at why you had your shit blocked yesterday.
I think it's just an admin thing and 2 phone numbers, Ranjan. I really do. I mean,
okay. Well, in that case, forget that then. We'll have a look at other things that have been going on, and just, because that's the thing. It's not that meta to talk about the reason why, something's not being talked about or not allowed to. I think it's just completely cool. And even if it were meta, we can go there. It's a bit dry, a bit boring.
I mean, we know all that stuff goes on, but every little mishap that occurs, the cock-up theory of life is still by far and away the in terms of any distribution, 80%, it's a Pareto distribution. 80% of stuff is cock-up. 80% of profits come from 20% of effort, so on and so forth. So I know in the past my account has been suspended. What happened was I came up with an acronym rather, which was Theresa May as a cunt. Cunt standing for conservative under narrow terms, and someone took exception to that and said it was basically I don't know,
offensive,
and swearing and stuff. Whereas it wasn't. In the same way that I've got a section on my Conquest of Dough blog. The blog there is called Objective Cunts. Well, you can say it that way. It's actually Objective Coons, after Thomas Kuhn, the famous philosopher, Khun. He was a philosopher of science who coined the term paradigm shift.
Sure.
I mean, I think that's funny, just because I've got a pure old schoolboy sense of humour. But at the same time, people that want to take offence from that will. But double entendre is funny, I think.
Well, I think now that you've got yourself giggling, I feel that this is the perfect time. As you know, my philosophy is no such thing as loyalty, and you've got to kick people when they're down. As many as possible. There's no such thing as innocent.
Yeah.
Okay, so
such a sweet man. Wonderful. Such a snowflake.
Okay, so the finger is getting ready to being pointed.
Okay,
to be pointed. Okay, so
I missed you having your boxing glove and handbag.
Yeah, that's it. So I mean, there's no such thing as scattergun approach. It's always targeted.
I consider myself handbagged.
Not quite yet. Not quite yet. Now, you know who's under suspicion?
Under suspicion of what? By whom?
Well, by me. Of gross treasonous larceny.
Okay, good lord. Right, okay. Yeah. Who?
Well, and also of being Jerry.
Being Jerry, oh, I love Shrimpton.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
You know who's rampantly Jerry?
Okay, who's rampantly Jerry?
Well, UK column. Brian Gerrish and Mike Robinson.
No, you don't think that, do you?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
I'm highly suspicious of their behaviour at this stage. I mean, don't get me wrong, I really like them, and I think they do fantastic work. But I must say...
But the thing is, Dame Allen, I think, is Jerry. Yeah,
but that's cool. That's cool. I mean...
But Dame Allen is clearly angling for Remain. He's a Remainer. And whatever one thinks of UK column, Remainers they ain't. So
No, but from our discussion of Ursula von der Leyen, which was really just moving off Wikipedia mainly, from our discussion there, I think that UK column they're a kind of combination of a form of Jerry and also Russian as well. I think UK column, and when I say that, I mean,
yeah, it's interesting you should say that. I mean, I don't know. I mean, like you, I like them too, and I like their open.
Yeah, I mean, I think the cock up thing is, as you said, still the most likely thing. But the coverage that they gave to so much gender recognition stuff and so much of the GC math. Don't get me wrong, the GC math is important and stuff like that. But because GC math was so massive at the beginning and the gender recognition took up so much time, I was waiting for them to comment on the Buzzfeed thing, which was a big story, really. And I rely on them to shine a light on certain things that are just quite big. That people like them with their radars, they pick that stuff up. And I remember thinking, I'm being pushed over the line here, because I contacted them about some stuff to do with Nicky Morgan before, and they're very good on media. Anyway, the thing is that
I do see them as very establishment. They call them, and I'm not anti-establishment per se. I mean, I'm a bit of an oddball, really. What I recognise is that there are factions in the establishment, and I consider myself to be a part of the establishment, but not aligned to any particular faction. And I like people that are in all elements of it. Even the people I really disagree with. I kind of think, well, I've still got time for them. Their opinion is as valid as mine, even though I wouldn't do things that way. There are choices, and if you can't agree amongst yourselves, what do you do with choices? You put them to the vote. That's democracy, surely.
Have you come across the Whitney Webb articles?
Yes, yeah, I've read a lot of her stuff. She's
apparently she's getting Google are discriminating against Mint Press or whatever they're called, so they don't come up in the news. I still haven't printed them out or read them, but I got told part 4 of her series basically is talking about how, and it starts to bring a lot of this stuff in.
She's written a lot of Epstein stuff, but also she wrote a joint article with in Syria, the diplomat's daughter, Vanessa Beeley. She wrote joint stuff with Vanessa Beeley. And again, I like Vanessa Beeley, but I disagree with a number of her political positions. And I have sort of said, she's one of the people that will always say, oh, the left say this or the left say that. And I kind of, it surprised me when she started doing that, because she's, very intelligent and all the rest of it. And I said, it kind of, for me, it's just the lack of subtlety in that as a way of approaching questions. It's just an excuse not to think about things and to argue the real substance of any particular matter. It's a little bit like no platforming, but no platforming for ideas, if you see what I mean. So in a conversation, you will no platform some ideas whilst promoting others, and a good way of doing that is to say, oh, well, that's left wing or that's right wing.
Yeah, Rees-Mogg does that all the time. Yeah, but yeah, lots of people do it.
I blame Twitter.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember I did that podcast, Amusing Ourselves to Death? I mean, one of the things that he said is that when Abraham Lincoln did his debates, then people would turn up on the lawn of the White House and have sandwiches with their family, and it would take 3 hours and everybody got it. Whereas now, if you are asked to sum up your entire program in 3 minutes or 1 minute or something like that, then there's only one thing to do, and that's just to refuse. Say, I'm sorry, I'm not going to tell you everything I stand for in, because then you hold me to account to just that one thing. I will tell you, but you've got to give me more time. But just to say one last thing, somebody told me in Whitney Webb's article in part 4, there's a big link to the election rigging and things like that may be happening here via use of data and stuff like that. Not rigging, but neuro-rigging. But because of the way Epstein apparently had lots of compromise on Silicon Valley. So yeah, Palantir and some of that stuff, which I don't know too much about, but I did see Palantir tweets were promoted in my feed this week.
I looked at one of yours, which was a video interviewing the guy from Palantir, which it was very interesting to
Alex Carr. Yeah. All right, well, I better go. Great talking to you. I'm going to publish this, and let's do another Skype share where we maybe talk about what's been moderated, what hasn't been commented on, and the evolution of these various other stories.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'm interested in the Grace story you said about earlier. I'm going to have a look at that. That sounds quite interesting.
Yeah, well, I have to.
It was all interesting, Ranjan. Don't get me wrong.
Quite, thank you. I'm also dangling the idea in front of Frances Coppola of possibly doing a podcast with her. Well, she should be doing one anyway. And on that,
I spoke to David. You mentioned David earlier. I spoke to him the other day, and he was going to write a short piece about something, but he did say yes, he would do another live stream interview. I did one with him a couple of years ago, which is in my YouTube channel. But I said, it would be much more interesting for him to talk to people like you or John Ward. People that want to make things interesting. I'm not that kind of guy. I don't, I can't. I've always hated performing. It's not.
Well, I haven't seen your chat with him, but it may well be really good.
Well, I mean, it was informative. I thought, but it. The thing is your interview of Real Media with David, which, as far as I was concerned, I felt cheated because it said there was going to be a longer one, which was never produced.
Terrible.
and that got into his stuff about the money laundering,
Yeah.
and what have you. I was looking the other day on WikiSpooks. There's an article on the Gollum blog on WikiSpooks, and it mentions David's work on money laundering.
Right.
And also he mentions in his interview with you the article
Reuters.
he was commissioned to write for Reuters, yes, and which was spiked.
Yeah.
And that goes particularly to what you're saying about Whitney Webb right now.
Right.
Yes, and it ties back into Russiagate as well, of course.
Oh, one last thing. I found a book called Kingdom of Lies by someone who is a cybersecurity journalist and professor. So she's a professor or something like that at the University of Maryland. But she also wrote on cybersecurity for the Wall Street Journal and took a few months out to write this book because she said, oh, it's very good. The Wall Street Journal, you can't do a quote unless it's sourced. But there's all these people who wanted to remain anonymous. And I've written this book so I can tell you what they told me. And I got told those are the books to watch out for. So I'll let you know what's in that.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah. David Icke's launch last night of his new book, The Trigger Effect, is very good. It's worth watching.
Thanks.
I started watching the live stream last night and watched it from the cache of my computer this morning. And it's very, very, very good. And it's about 9/11.
Okay.
You and I were talking about Larry Silverstein and about, I was explaining to you that Paul Reitman,
yeah,
probably my all-time business hero. Paul Reitman, Olympia, New York, and they built the World Trade Center. And Paul Reitman, as far as I'm concerned, is, he's like the saint of property development for me. And so, that's. And you and I had that conversation, didn't we? And one of Paul's buildings would not have fallen over under those circumstances.
Sure.
And David Icke goes into all of this sort of stuff. No, not about Paul, but there
Brilliant.
we are.
Okay.
Anyway,
yeah, good talking to you. Talk
and
soon.
you.
Have a great day.